Welcome to the Chapter 6 Introduction. Chapter 6 deals with grammatical roles. So what does that mean? Well, so far in the first 5 chapters, we've really only been concerned with identifying and classifying individual words and phrases. We're looking at words themselves and trying to identify what kind of word this is. What word class or part of speech can we put that word into? And then we were looking at grouping those words into phrases and then how those phrases can be grouped together to form sentences. Okay, so we were only concerned with what is it? What kind of word is this? What kind of phrase is this? Starting in chapter 6, now we're looking at the role, that is the function of those words and phrases. After we identify what it is, now what is it doing? What are we doing with it in the sentence? So looking at these 4 examples, if we were going to separate them into noun phrases and verb phrases, you might see something like this. Okay, so we can see that each sentence can be divided into, these are all simple sentences, right? We have a noun phrase and a verb phrase. And if you know anything about grammar, we have now divided our sentences into subject and predicate. Okay, and the first thing we'll notice is that the subject of the sentence is going to be a noun phrase, but there's no rule as to how short or long it could be. It could be one word, as in the 3rd example, we have a single pronoun, I. Or it could be this long noun phrase, like we see in the last example, where we have an adjective clause describing the waitress, right? And then the verb phrase, the predicate will be a verb phrase. And there's no rule about how short or long the verb phrase can be. In the final 4th sentence, the verb phrase is a single verb, slept, right? Whereas in the 3rd sentence, we've got this longer verb phrase. In the 1st sentence, we've got a pretty short verb phrase, but it has an object. Okay, it has 2 objects. But we can see here that the basic, right, standard simple sentence will have subject, a predicate. The subject is a noun phrase. The predicate is a verb phrase. Okay, but we're not going to get those confused and say, well, noun phrases are subjects, right? And verb phrases are predicates. No, right? Because if we take another look, we can see some other noun phrases in here and some other verb phrases. So just looking at the first 3 sentences, we can see that in that predicate, in the 1st sentence, that's a verb phrase, but it has a verb and 2 nouns there, right? A pronoun and a noun. And then in the 2nd sentence, that verb phrase, the predicate is a verb phrase, but it includes a verb, it includes a preposition phrase, it includes some prepositions, it includes another noun phrase in there, right? And then in the 3rd sentence, we have this long predicate. It's got a verb. It's got another verb, an infinitive verb. It's got 2 prepositional phrases, right? Inside those prepositional phrases are noun phrases. So we have these noun phrases that we've identified. There's the head of the phrase is a noun. But sometimes in the case of cheese pizza, that noun phrase is the subject. That's its role. Right? Sometimes that noun phrase might be an object, a direct object or an indirect object. That's me and gas in the 1st sentence, right? Sometimes the noun phrase is embedded within a prepositional phrase, like down the street, right? On the weekends. So that noun phrase is not the subject, it's not the object, it's inside a prepositional phrase, right? Sometimes the verb is the head of the verb phrase that makes up the predicate, like give, ran, prefer, slept. But in other times, we see these verb phrases that are inside other verb phrases, like your infinitive, to be, or the infinitive verb phrase, to pay, which is inside a noun phrase. That's the subject of the sentence, okay? So we've identified nouns and noun phrases. What are the roles of those noun phrases, right? Is it the subject, object? Is it inside a prepositional phrase? What's going on with that noun phrase? We've identified verb phrases. Is it the main predicate of the sentence, right? Or is it inside another verb phrase or inside a noun phrase? What's going on with that? Okay, what are these prepositions doing? Okay, so those are the roles that we talk about, the function that these things are playing, and that's what we're going to start talking about with chapter 6. The first 5 things we're going to look at here in chapter 6 are intransitive, transitive, ditransitive, and then subject complement, object complement. These are verb phrase patterns. So what's the main thing that's going to determine everything else about a sentence is what's going on with that verb. The main verb in the predicate is going to tell us how all the other pieces of the sentence are interacting, right? So basically with intransitive and transitive and ditransitive, we are trying to decide if that verb takes an object. Some verbs never take an object. Some verbs must take an object. Some verbs can take a direct object and an indirect object. So you've got 2 things going on there. And then with subject and object complement, we've got sentences where the verb is equating 2 noun phrases. Either the subject is some other thing or the object is some other thing, okay? So this is all about the verb phrase and how it's interacting with noun phrases and what's going on. So see video part 2 where we start talking about transitivity, right? Transitive verb phrases.